Good afternoon. I'd like to declare a quorum and call the June 2nd, 2015 meeting of the Board of Education to order. We have with us a special guest this afternoon, Tony Stripes, a second grade student at Paramount Elementary School, and he's already stepped forward. We're going to do the pledge in a moment of silence. Thank you, Tony.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Stay up at the mic, Tony. Okay. I think you brought some special guests of your own with you. Would you like to introduce them?
I have a mom. She's
Glad you have Mom. That's good.
Her name is Christy, but then I have a little brother. He's only 7 months old. His name is Anderson Stripes. But then I have 3 other brothers and then one more sister. My sister's name is Isabel Stripes. Another one of my brothers is Trevor Stripes. But then I have another brother that's JJ Stripes. It's short for Jeremy Joseph. But then I have a brother that's in kindergarten at Paramount Elementary. He's Trevor. But then I also have my baby brother Anderson. And
Wow.
He's 7 months old.
I love it. Thank you. That's great. Tell us about your life at Paramount Elementary. What do you like and what do you do there?
I really like Paramount Elementary. It's a good school. I have a good teacher, and I don't want to change anything there.
Don't want to change anything?
No.
Do you have a favorite subject?
PE, gym.
That's a great subject, absolutely. Do you play sports?
No. No sports. No.
Hasn't occurred to you. Is there anything that you'd like to tell us about yourself or your family?
2 of my dogs passed away. One was very old. The other one died as soon as it was her birthday.
Oh, that's not a good way to celebrate a birthday. Okay.
Yeah, she was a pretty old dog. I have 2 cats. I have one that's Merlin, brown, more of a black and tan. But then I have another cat named Bart, completely black, shreds hair all over the place. I have to brush him every day. My dog named Buddy, he was very old. He was white. I had another dog named Bella. She was more of a blackish color. And we used to have 10 people in our family, counting the dogs and cats. But now we only have 8 because our 2 dogs passed away.
Very good.
Example of Common Core math. Thank you.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you so much, Tony. Appreciate you taking time to come here, and thanks, Mrs. Stripes, for bringing him. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
I'd also like to take a moment to introduce another special guest with us. Erica Greenwald from North High will be our new board student rep starting in July. And we'll introduce her more formally when she takes over at the first meeting in July. Thank you for coming. Okay, looking at approval of the draft agenda.
Madam President, I move for the approval of the agenda as presented by the Agenda Planning Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Minutes.
Yes, I move for the approval of the minutes of the work session held on Tuesday, May 19th, 2015. Also of the closed session held that same day, and also the business meeting minutes held on that same day, Tuesday, May 19th, 2015.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. All right, that takes us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Wilcox?
Thank you very much. Today we have really two exciting recognitions. First of all, we're going to recognize a young man who has won the Maryland Trig Star competition. He'll be joined, I think, by his principal, April Bishop, and our math supervisor, Kara Burhans. The second recognition will be for some student athletes, and we will recognize their success at the recent state championships. So without any further ado, I'd like to call forward Alex Snoffer. And board members, if you'd go down front, please, to welcome him, and then we'll bring the track team up shortly after them. I will point out as you walk down to your chair, down to the front, that Alex won the State of Maryland Trig Star competition by the Maryland Society of Surveyors. This is the second year in a row for Alex to win the competition. He remains the only student in Washington County to achieve this honor. The Trig Star competition is a math computation test for surveying using trigonometry skills in which students must are scored in for both accuracy and in timing. Alex has achieved a 100% score in 37 minutes, and he was awarded a cash prize of $550 for the Maryland Society of Surveyors. It's also important to note for all of you that Alex is the Williamsport High School's valedictorian for the year 2015. And Richard, thank you. Congratulations, Alex. We're very proud of you. Last year, I got to come to your school and get cake, though. I don't quite understand how we'll please.
Alex, congratulations.
As Alex is being congratulated by the board members, I just wanted to note one more time what Dr. Wilcox said. This is the second year in a row for Alex to achieve this status in the Trig Star competition. It's an amazing accomplishment, and again, his valedictorian status. Please give him another round of applause. Next, I'd like to ask the Smithsburg Girls Outdoor Track 1A State Championship team to come forward. First athlete is Sandra Sago.
Sandra, congratulations. I couldn't miss
Kate
you coming with
Fauntleroy.
Kate, congratulations. Thank you so much.
Brianna Anthony.
Brianna, very proud of you. Thank you so
Brett
much.
Grove.
What was your event? Outstanding. How high did you go? Pole vault.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Quinn Wondolowski.
Proud.
Fiona Zom. Gabrielle Reason. Lauren Daniels. Haley Hartney. Mallory Maholt. Maddie Gilliam. Haley David. Corinne Burke. Michaela Jerwick. Two athletes that could not be with us today are Erica Lindsay and Brianna Rao, and we extend our congratulations to them as well. Before we bring up one of our single state champions, I did want to mention, I learned from the coaches that this team finished third at the outdoor championships last year. They finished second at the indoor championships this year, and through their hard work and perseverance are here before us today as state track champions. So another round of applause, please. And before we bring the coaches up, I want to recognize a male athlete from Smithsburg as well, Jacob Pryor. He is the 1A pole vault state champion. Please come forward, Jacob. Coaches. And finally, the coaches. First, head coach TJ Hood. Coach Ray Shriver. And Coach Holly Robinson. No, one more round of applause, please. Our Boonesboro athletes could not be with us today, but I did want to recognize them. Tony DiGiuseppe is the 2A discus state champion, and Megan Grams is the 2A 800-meter run. I think many of us have heard their names before in this room, and we've certainly seen these Smithsburg athletes here before us. One more note, as a team, the ladies have a 3.74 combined GPA. Congratulations.
Okay, everyone's seated. We will continue. The next item on the agenda is public comment. We have 2 individuals signed up to speak this afternoon. First individual is James Doyle. If you'll come forward. Mr. Doyle, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. It's very fortuitous today. We have Nick Munson from WHAG-TV. He actually went down with us to the Naval Academy and covered the story for us. He did a very nice piece for us. Today, I'd simply like to, I sent everyone an email this morning with a video attachment of some chess lessons that we gave to all of the kindergarten and first grade classes at Potomac Heights Elementary. I hope everyone got that. It was a wonderful day, and it was my understanding that the principal and several of the teachers wanted to continue the program. I've been exchanging emails with the superintendent, and I'm here today simply to continue to offer possible options or suggestions of things that might work. I would be very happy to continue the program at Potomac Heights Elementary if you were interested in that. Also, in the email, I outlined a couple of other ideas. I'd be very happy this summer to volunteer to train some of your teachers. Anyone that's interested in starting a chess program, I'd be happy to do that. We could do that in maybe a one-day workshop, and I'd volunteer my time and all the materials that would be needed to do that. Also, though, I wanted to, if I have time, I wanted to read very quickly a description of another program in New York City called New York Chess and what they're doing to help train teachers in New York City to teach chess and start chess programs. But before I do that, I wanted to mention that we also got into, we're going to be featured this month in Chess Life for Kids magazine. If you're not involved in the chess world, Chess Life for Kids is kind of the companion to Chess Life, which is the Bible of American chess. So we're very fortunate. They have a 2-page story, and I sent everyone a link to that story. Very quickly, a description of the New York program. New York City, New York Chess was founded in 1986, and the program sends an experienced chess instructor to the schools to establish a chess program. The New York chess instructors teach 5 lessons and help a teacher at the school develop an ongoing program. The instructors are assisted by high school chess players and students from the local school who excel in chess. The youth serve as assistants and work with the pupils between visits from the New York chess instructor. More than 3,000 inner-city children in more than 100 public schools participated in the program between 1986 and 1990. It's still ongoing, this program. The program continues to motivate young children in some of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. And if I'm not over time, I'd like to just
You're at about 2:40.
Okay. Some of the things that it does, chess instills in young players a sense of self-confidence and self-worth, dramatically improves a child's ability to think rationally, improves cognitive skills, communication skills, and results in higher grades, especially in English and math studies. And the list goes on, but my time is up, I'm sure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle, just
Yes, ma'am.
a question for clarification. You have attended several meetings now.
This is my fourth.
We would tend to think you may be running for office, but
Well, that's an idea.
there you go. But my question is, I believe you have met with and spoken to several of our staff. You've spoken with the superintendent. There's been a lot of communication, a lot of feedback, and I'm not going to get into a debate here. I'm just, at some point, I would think this is very operational. It's school-based decision, and this is something that I think you've really pursued at the correct level. And I believe at this point, staff has decided that this program is not a good fit at this moment. So I always appreciate, we're very supportive of the public coming and sharing with us. I do feel like this is becoming repetitive. So I would just suggest that maybe there's another option here.
I would very much like to talk to you about some of the details, some of the things that have happened. I'm simply here, it's the public comment section.
It
So I'm
is.
utilizing that time to suggest
Absolutely. Very good.
alternatives and options.
I just wanted the public to know that we're not just sitting here totally unaware of your comments. I wanted people to know that we've had over 100 email exchanges with you. Staff has had numerous. You call the office and speak to our board secretary numerous times. So we're certainly giving attention to the issue you're presenting to us.
Can I clarify that
So
one point?
at this point, we're going to move forward. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Next is Dale Williams. Is Mr. Williams in the room? Okay, very good. That's all we have signed up for today. Is anyone here who would like to speak and take this opportunity to come forward? All right. Any of my colleagues have any response to the public comments? Seeing none, we're going to unfinished business. Consideration of the FY 2016 General Fund Operating Budget Adjustment. Mr. South, our Chief Financial Officer, and Mr. Gesford, our Chair of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Brightman. I just wanted to say that we did have our meeting on Tuesday, and Chris is going to go ahead and go over some of our findings.
Very good. Thank you, Mr.
Good
South.
afternoon, Madam President, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board. In March, the board approved the fiscal 2016 general fund operating budget. That budget included a request to the county for funding in excess of maintenance of effort for the first time in 6 years. It also included a draft state aid figure which showed a loss of nearly $1.8 million from the amount that the state provided in the current year. We've now received final state and county numbers. The good news is that the state aid rebounded with $1.9 million more than the amount included in the draft calculation. The bad news, of course, is that the commissioners provided only maintenance of effort. This is $4.1 million short of fully funding the Board of Education's local request. These two changes necessitate adjustments totaling $2.1 million to your fiscal 2016 budget. At your last meeting, you remanded the budget to the Finance Committee to provide a list of recommended changes. As Mr. Gesford noted, the Finance Committee met on May 26th, and their recommended adjustments were included in the packet that you received last Friday. I'm sure that each of you have had an opportunity to review the committee's recommendations. However, I would like to provide a very short synopsis for the public. First, to compensate for the $4.1 million shortfall in local funding, the Finance Committee recommends removing the items that the board had planned to fund with the additional $4.1 million. This includes 12.5 contingency teachers and the additional $3.2 million that the board had placed in the salary resource pool. Second, along with the $1.9 million of additional state aid that WCPS will receive, the committee also enumerated approximately $1.1 million in savings that have materialized subsequent to the approval of the budget in March. This allowed the committee to recommend adding back 5 of the contingency teachers and increasing the salary resource pool by nearly $2.7 million. All of that being said, at this time, staff recommends that the full board approve the adjustments to the FY 2016 budget as recommended by the Finance Committee. And of course, I'd be glad to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. South. Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I move to adjust the FY 2016 general fund budget for the Washington County Public Schools to reflect the loss of $4,059,574 in local revenue that was not appropriated by the Board of County Commissioners, an increase in state revenue of $1,939,985, and other miscellaneous charges needed to balance the budget as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gesford. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Discussion. Questions for Mr. Gesford or Mr. South?
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd just like to make a few comments just to expand a little bit on what Mr. South has already said. Looking back through our budget process, at one point we had taken out funds from our budget for the school resource officers. The Finance Committee's recommendation includes full funding for the school resource officers. Same with the crossing guards that the board had taken out of the budget as part of our request to the county. And all of the funds for all of those services have been placed back in the budget based on the Finance Committee's recommendation. Third, the nurses, which we had mentioned, we were asking the county to provide us the additional funds so that we could pay for the nurses. Nursing services are fully funded within the budget that's before us. Am I leaving anything out regarding the cuts that we had made or the?
No, sir. I believe you've enumerated them completely.
Okay. And I just want to be sure that the public understands that as we went through the process of building the budget, and those were opportunities we thought to look for additional revenue, we have fully restored all of those services. So our students will still have crossing guards. There will still be resource officers in all of our high schools. There'll still be nursing services. None of those services that affect kids will be affected by what we do. I, for one, am glad that we've been able to keep at least a handful of contingency teachers. If the board approves this budget, I know we heard from a number of people during our public hearing about, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, pockets where perhaps there may be only 2 classes per grade level at a particular school, where perhaps a few extra teachers in the resource pool, we might be able to address some of those enrollment pressures, or at least class size pressures, not enrollment pressures. 5 contingency teachers not going to lower class size across the district, that's for sure. That's a much more expensive proposition. But I'm glad that we could put some in here to give the superintendent and his staff the tools they need to address some of those pockets where there's challenges, perhaps in the fall. And finally, my final comment is the budget's a process, and it's been a long process, starting, goodness, way back in the fall when the superintendent began to draft and plan for this year's budget. It's gone through his staff, through him, through the board, to the commissioners, back to the board. And just as a reminder, not everything that ends up in the final product is in the first product. And that's on purpose, and that's to be expected, because the information you have changes, the numbers change, the legislature does its work. But I did want to point out that our actual revenue, so dollar revenue comparing last fiscal year to the fiscal year we're voting on now is down $5,000. Part of the revenue we receive, though, is for the additional revenue we're receiving is for the pension transfer. That's about $742,000. So if you take into consideration the fact that that revenue for us just has to go straight into paying our pension obligations, in effect, as a school system, our total revenue is down this year about $750,000. Is that a fair way to put it, Mr. South?
That's fair analysis.
It might not be the way an accountant would put it, but it's the way I understand it. So if our whole revenue is down $750,000, that means everything else that we've wanted to do that are priorities in this budget have to come out of a pool of resources, which is $750,000 less than what we had last year. The salary resource pool that you can see in this budget is $3.2 million. That means to get there, we had to cut $4 million worth of other things in order to cover those two pieces, the resource pool and the loss of revenue. So to me, that shows that making funds available to compensate our employees is a priority. Certainly it is for me, and it is for this board. And I know it didn't look like we could end up with those kinds of resources maybe 2 months ago, but I'm pleased with where we've gotten. And I think anybody who looks at the cuts we've had to make, I think it's fair to say that we have, as we've made all of those cuts, put almost $3.5 million of those dollars towards providing additional compensation to our employees. So that's why I will be pleased to support the budget as amended. So thank you and your staff for all the work you've done over this long process since last fall.
Jack, Ms. Fisher.
I do have a concern in the area of the contingency teachers. Last year, we had 5 contingency teachers, and that did not prove to be enough. I'm concerned, even though our overall enrollment's down, as Dr. Harding had indicated, various pockets occur in individual schools where we sometimes have to hire additional teachers to work things out. And I really wish we could increase the number of contingency places by a few more teachers.
One of the things I would share, Mrs. Fisher, is that each year we go about the staffing process and we pay careful attention, but this year we're going to pay an even more granular level of attention. I've directed Mr. Akers and Mr. Semler to meet before the 1st of July with every principal in the district to go over their numbers by grade level, by class, and any place that we see we have a class size that is either too great based on our projection or is below our staffing model. We were going to make changes over the course of the summer before teachers come back, because we know how difficult it is to move people once the class actually takes seats. So there will probably be a little more churn this summer as we try to get our schools right-sized for the number of kids that are assigned. We hope then to be able to keep some of those positions in our back pocket to address those enrollment blips that we can't see based on the movement of young people between one housing complex perhaps and another, between one neighborhood and another. So we're going to do, I think, a much more detailed job than we have in the past, knowing that last year we ran short and knowing that the budget is tight.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams.
Yes, I share Mrs. Fisher's concern with regard to contingency teachers, and in looking at the budget in hopes of finding line items that could perhaps be reduced in order to free up some money so that we could increase the number of contingency teachers. I was looking at the line item tuition reimbursement, and there are 3 employee groups there. My understanding is that anyone submitting for reimbursement needs to have that in by June 30th for this year, for money that's budgeted this year.
I my office does not handle the logistics of
Okay.
due dates on that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I do
for-
believe it's a little bit later than that due to the fact that a lot of times grades don't get out for second semester until mid-June.
Okay.
So but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so looking at the numbers that Dr. Wilcox provided in response to an email question that I asked as to how much has been spent of the $625,000 allocated for teachers, the $25,000 allocated for ESPs, and the $60,000 allocated for ANS staff, it appears that remaining for this year would be $275,000. We've budgeted the same amount, I believe, for those three line items for
I believe so.
FY
That's
for
correct.
FY 2016. So I'm wondering if that line item can be reduced. And by doing some quick math, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it looks to me as though the number for a contingency teacher, and I guess this would be salary and benefits, is a little over $68,000.
That's
That's about right.
Yes, ma'am.
So looking at that particular line item and also looking at travel line items in various departments, I'm looking at that line item as showing an increase for fiscal year 2016. Community relations, and I guess that's what, public affairs, facilities, human resources, data and information processing, facilities capital outlay. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are with regard to possibly finding money within those suggested line items to increase the number of contingency teachers.
The amounts that are included in the tuition reimbursement are largely negotiated. The teacher's amount and the ESP amount is, I believe, exactly as negotiated. The ANS amount was increased slightly above the negotiated amount when a cohort was started for the Ed.D. program at University of Maryland. So those amounts, there's very little, I think, that can be done with those amounts in the budget in that they are negotiated amounts, and we're bound by our contracts to keep those amounts in the budget. With regard to the travel accounts, I would have to look at the individual travel accounts. However, with some of the areas that you've noted, like HR and information technology and those types of areas, I would point out that due to the back office software implementation, a lot of the travel that those folks generally do to conferences and that sort of thing has been curtailed greatly this year because those folks have needed to be in the office to take care of that implementation. So those amounts will likely be needed in the future.
Thank you, Mr. South.
Further questions? Ms. Harshman.
I just sort of have a statement. I wanted to thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I would like to say that I'm very glad that the Finance Department made that effort to address the concerns that caused me to vote against the budget the last time. I wanted to thank you again for closely examining the totals and finding additional money that will support some of the areas that were areas of concern. And if, I'm sure, you come across any other money that can be freed up, you will bring that forth to us and we will be eternally grateful. So thank you very much, Mr. South.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to let you know that the date for spring courses is July 15th, and that is in our contract, as is the dollar amount.
Okay. And so while that, I'm understanding that there's a certain amount that must be budgeted according to the negotiated agreement. So money that is unspent then goes into the fund balance, is that correct?
It would go into the fund balance if it's unspent. Historically, though, with the exception of I think 1 year recently, we've pretty much utilized just about all of that money.
Okay, I didn't write down the actuals for the 2 previous years, but my memory is that for FY15 and 16, the amount of money allocated had increased. What determines the number that is in the agreement? Is it a certain number of teachers? Is it just an amount for who first come, first serve? How is that determined?
There's actually a formula. I think so many teachers are allowed so many credits per year that will be reimbursed, and then we pegged the amount per credit to I believe it was the Frostburg or the University of Maryland cost per credit. That was several years ago. And then normally what happens is we look at the number of teachers who are working toward their master's or master's equivalency, and then that's sort of how that $600,000 number was arrived at.
So there is a plan submitted by each teacher so that gives you an idea how to project how much money you're going to need to have in that line item in order to be able to reimburse those teachers as they complete whatever is on that plan for a given year. Is that correct?
That's how the negotiated number was arrived at the table. But once the number's negotiated, we're bound to put it into the budget every year. But like you said, if it's not utilized, it does drop to the fund balance at the end of the year.
And so according to the language right now, the last time it was negotiated was for the 11-12 school year. Because I know since I've been here, that hasn't been something we've negotiated. And it's 9 credit hours, $317 per hour.
I'm sorry, again, please.
9 credit hours, a maximum that we reimburse per year, and $317 per credit hour.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Not seeing any additional questions. The question is on Mr. Gesford's motion on the adjustment to the FY 2016 general fund budget. All those in favor? 7-0, and student concurs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to new business, and that is the school attendance zone realignment. And what I need to do prior to going into the different motions and recommendations, I would like to read into the record the process. More than 2 years ago, the Board of Education issued a charge to the Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee to examine school boundaries across the county in preparation for the construction of the new Jonathan Hager Elementary School and the closure both of Winter Street School and Conococheague. Following that, FEAC met 11 times and considered 43 possible attendance zone realignment options, a process that has been reported numerous times in local media and through the WCPS website. In June of 2014, FEAC presented a progress report to the Board of Education in a public meeting. At that time, the board offered feedback to the group in anticipation of the final report that was expected in January of this year. On January 6th, the group presented recommendations to the board in a public work session. At that time, the board requested a further review, and the committee reconvened and presented its updated recommendations to the board on April 7th. This additional time provided the committee a chance to refine recommendations based on the most up-to-date enrollment projections. After the board voted to accept the work of FEAC, the superintendent was then able to issue his final report to the board on April 16th, which was presented publicly on April 21st at the Board of Education meeting. The reports from FEAC and the superintendent were then presented and discussed at the May 4th public hearing, where the board heard concerns and support from community members impacted by these recommendations. To date, the school system has communicated these recommendations to the affected families through the Connect 5 system, phone calls, emails, and text messages. This process has happened 2 times, once on April 21st and again on April 30th. At the same time, affected schools have partnered with the Public Information Office to disseminate similar information through social media, direct letters, and direct letters sent home to parents. Additionally, WCPS website and Facebook pages, board work sessions, business meetings, advertising in the Herald Mail newspaper, and extensive coverage in the local media have all been ways the board and WCPS have communicated the public hearing and redistricting recommendations. Additionally, today's vote was publicized on the WCPS website, communicated to media, posted to the Facebook, Twitter pages, an advertisement was placed in the Herald Mail newspaper, and Connect 5 calls and emails were sent to families at each school potentially impacted by the board's actions this afternoon. One final note regarding the appeal process before we begin considering motions on these redistricting recommendations. The members of the Board of Education will be considering a number of boundary realignments. The recommendations have been placed into 6 groups along with one separate recommendation, which is recommendation number 22. I will provide an overview of each group, and the board will then be requested to consider each recommendation one by one. In accordance with Board Policy JCA, within 5 business days from the date the board votes today and accepts a recommendation regarding changes in attendance areas, any interested parent and/or resident may appeal in writing by a timely notice to the president of the board. The parent and/or resident shall state in writing specific objections to the board's decision and the basis for those objections. The board shall, within 5 business days of said written objection, respond in writing to those objections. Any further right to appeal will be to the State Board of Education as provided by 4-205 of the Education article. All right, and I believe everyone has received in their packets the same paperwork that I'm going to be reading from. So we will start. At this time, we will consider the proposed attendance zone realignment starting with Group 1. In Group 1, the acceptance of boundary realignment recommendations number 1, 2, 3, and 4 will create a new attendance zone for Jonathan Hager Elementary School. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 1?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 1, which reassigns approximately 236 kindergarten through 5th grade students from Salem Avenue Elementary Attendance Zone to become part of the new Jonathan Hager Elementary Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Is there a second?
Second.
Gessert? Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor of Dr. Harding's motion? 7, none opposed, no abstention, and the student member concurs. Okay, is there a motion to accept recommendation number 2?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 2, which reassigns approximately 82 kindergarten through 5th grade students from the closing Conococheague Elementary Attendance Zone to become part of the new Jonathan Hager Elementary Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Discussion. All those in favor of Dr. Harding's motion? 7-0, and student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 3?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 3, which reassigns approximately 23 kindergarten through 5th grade students from the Lincolnshire Elementary Attendance Zone to become part of the new Jonathan Hager Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Fisher, thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 4?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 4, which reassigns approximately 23 kindergarten through 5th grade students from the Morgansville Elementary Attendance Zone to become part of the new Jonathan Hager Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Second?
Second.
Mrs. Williams, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Now, Group 2, the acceptance of boundary realignment recommendations number 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 will reassign portions of the existing attendance zone for Conacojig Elementary and the entire existing Winter Street Elementary attendance zone to different elementary school facilities, and will provide enrollment relief to Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 5?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 5, which reassigns approximately 22 K-5 students from the closing Conacojig Elementary Attendance Zone to the Clear Spring Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Fisher, maybe one, getting that in. Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation 6?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 6, which reassigns approximately 53 K-5 students from the closing Conacojig Elementary Attendance Zone to the Morgansville Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Williams. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 7?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 7, which reassigns approximately 170 K-5 students from the closing Winter Street Elementary Attendance Zone to the Salem Avenue Elementary Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Williams to the rescue. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. On to motion to, a motion to accept recommendation number 8.
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 8, which reassigns approximately 67 K-5 students from the closing Winter Street Elementary Attendance Zone to the Bester Elementary Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Fisher, discussion? Mrs. Harshman. Looks like there may be a question there.
Yes, and I don't have that pulled up. Is there a map with that on? This would be recommendation 8, the Winter Street Attendance Zone to Bester.
Is that the map you're looking for?
It's the balance of the Winter Street area. The top half, the northern half of Winter Street was redistricted to Salem Avenue. This would be the lower portion that's close to Bester Elementary.
And how far from Bester is that? And what is the closest school to that area? Is Salem Avenue close?
It's probably a similar distance for some of the areas and further for others. Obviously, if you go to the extent north and the southern portion of that one might be a little closer to Vester, and possibly the northern portion, northwestern portion might be a little closer to Salem. But it's, I think generally it was closer to Vester.
Can you back that up a little bit to make it smaller so you can see where the rest of the Vester lines are?
That's not a live map, that's a snapshot just of that area.
If Jamie, if you could put up B for me. Thank you. Thank you. So here's the current Vester Elementary attendance zone, and as you can see, the upper corner there is recommendation number 8. With the, it unfortunately doesn't show the exact location of Salem, but Salem would probably be located at about the top of the TV screen to give you an idea of what the distance would be. Again, some of the areas might be a little closer to Vester than they would be to Salem.
And what's the blue? Is that?
The blue is future recommendation number 15 that's under consideration to be realigned to Emma K. Dowd Elementary School.
Okay.
Additional question, Ms. Harshman?
No, thank you.
Question.
Yes.
Presently, does the students go to Winter Street? So they're being divided now, so their friends that are close by would go to Salem, and the other ones will go now to Vester. Is that what we're doing, dividing that? And it's just the railroad tracks type alignment?
The railroad tracks are actually on the southern portion.
Speaking figuratively, I think.
Okay.
I think.
What?
I'm good.
Something about railroad tracks.
I'm good with that, yeah.
figuratively.
I know what you're...
So this splits the students that normally went to Winter Street. There was a reason that I had a question about that, and that must have been it. It splits the Winter Street students into...
Largest portion of Winter Street will go to Salem. A smaller portion will go to Vester.
And this would be
much like
about
Conococheague
67
was-
students?
Yes. It's much like Conococheague was split 3 ways. I mean, we looked at the available capacity, and the FIAC committee did an excellent job trying to do the best they can with the space that we had.
Additional questions? All right, the question is on Mr. Ridenour's motion, number 8. All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. We're on to recommendation number 9. I will just read a note that's here. Board acceptance of recommendation number 9 is required for consideration of recommendation number 21. However, acceptance of recommendation number 9 does not require nor indicate the board's acceptance of recommendation number 21. So, in essence, this is dependent on some other, there's a domino effect here for everyone to be aware. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 9?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 9, which reassigns approximately 112 K-5 students from the combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary Attendance Zone to the Salem Avenue Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gessford. Discussion. All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. We're now on to Group 3, the acceptance of boundary realignment recommendations 10, 11, 12, and 13, will provide enrollment relief to Lincolnshire Elementary, Pangbourne Elementary, and Williamsport Elementary. Boundary realignment recommendation number 14 provides changes to the existing Northern Middle and Western Heights Middle attendance zone to create a contiguous boundary. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 10?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 10, which reassigns a non-residential area from the Lincolnshire Elementary attendance zone to the Bester Elementary attendance zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. A second?
Second.
Mrs. Fisher, discussion. Gaspard.
That section, it says it's non-residential, but it seems like there's row houses on that section. It's where the train store is, and then you have like 8 houses there, like a row house, and then you have the train museum, and it's saying it's non-residential, but it is residential.
I think it's back closer to the R.D. McKee, excuse me, the old R.D. McKee, but it's probably not a good reference for most people, but it's that area and on that side of the tracks.
It's
helping to
it's in
make
between the tracks then.
train tracks in the park.
In the park,
Yes.
yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes. Can you go back to A, Jamie? Thank you. We'll pull up a little bit bigger version just so you can see. In fact, I think it's right there. So I'm going to stand up, sorry. So the rail yard comes up, and that's actually the entire, if you looked at it on the World Imagery app, that's just the rail yard. It's where all the tracks come together, and the park is down behind it. But from our student database and everything else, there are no residential address points within that parcel block.
So on that, if you're heading towards the museum, railroad museum, the houses that are on the right-hand side are going to be going to Lincolnshire.
Yes, sir. If I'm correct, you can see South Burhans. The red line is the road, and you can see it encompasses the parcels on both sides of that and is not included in the area. This is just the rail
It's
property.
just real hard to see these lines on these small things, and we were kind of trying to figure that line out, and I thought if that's on a dividing line as that road, then there would be houses on the right. So, but it's going to be the rail yard then?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? All those in favor of Mr. Ridenhour's motion? 7-0, student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 11?
Madam President, move for the acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 11, which reassigns approximately 53 K-5 students from Lincolnshire Elementary attendance zone to the Fountain Rock Elementary attendance zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Discussion. Mrs. Harshman.
Could you pull that one up, please?
Yes, ma'am.
These are 53 students, approximately, who would be moved from Lincolnshire to Fountain Rock. Can you show where Fountain Rock is in relation to them?
Yes, Jamie, I need you to pull B back up if you don't mind. Sorry. Okay, so, of course, the board office is right on Downsville Pike, right at the top of the existing area. And you can see the little tip at the very top. I'll go back to that's the current Fountain Rock Elementary attendance zone. And when I flip, the little piece at the very top is the Oak Ridge Apartments, just on the other side of 70 here. That's this area. Fountain Rock, of course, is if you come just a little south and go left on Lappins Road, the school is right there on the right.
Based on the proximity to Lincolnshire and Dalb, would it not be more beneficial to either consider Dalb or leave those students at Lincolnshire. It seems like they really have a long distance when they were very close to the neighborhood school.
Yes, ma'am. The committee, the Facility Enrollment Advisory Committee actually discussed the opportunity to send those students to McKay Dowd. That was during the middle of their process, I believe. There was a couple concerns that they had with going to Dowd. Dowd, without any approved recommendations, is currently over 100% of state-rated capacity. It's also a dual school. It's a 1 through 5 grade school with kindergarten going to Funkstown at this point in time. The committee considered those considerations. They also considered the amount of open space at Fountain Rock. I believe Fountain Rock, if there are no additional students sent to Fountain Rock with any of the recommendations, it's projected to have an enrollment of 67%. And the committee thought instead of sending students to a school that was at or above state-rated capacity, they would send it to a school with capacity.
I think with 53 students in there, I think the bus would load pretty quickly, and the trip down Downsville Pike, I mean, Fountain Rock is literally 2.5, 3 minutes from here, and we're talking about 2 minutes to my right, north. So I think it would go in and be a pretty dense population to load fairly quickly, and it would be one bus and out and on its way to Fountain Rock.
Are we putting walls up there?
Fountain Rock, last year we did do some wall addition, much like it's going to be shared with the board during a proposal later this afternoon for Hickory. They're petitions, they're not walls, but petitions were added and made a big difference in the school.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? The question is on Mr. Ridenour's motion for recommendation number 11. All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 12?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 12, which reassigns approximately 35 K-5 students from the Williamsport Elementary Attendance Zone to Fountain Rock Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Mrs. Fisher, discussion? Mr. Gessford.
I just can't support that. Those students that go to the Williamsport Elementary already now are 35 students, and they want to bus them down to Fountain Rock. And they were the only community that actually had a petition drive to keep that there. And that is a magnet school down there, so could we not at least let the students that live in that area, who parents have bought homes, they're not apartments, they're homes, single-family homes, that have invested, savings to go to that school. I just think that, if it's a magnet program, we can allow the 35 students that we have in that area, in that district area, to go to Williamsport. I'd like to see them to do that, so I cannot support that at this time.
Thank you,
So,
Mr.
yeah.
Gessford. Other questions or comments? All right, the question is on Mr. Ridenour's motion. All those in favor? 4 in favor. Those opposed? 3. And student concurs with the majority. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 13?
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 13, which reassigns approximately 31 K-5 students from the Pangbourne Elementary Attendance Zone to Potomac Heights Elementary Attendance Zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Discussion on recommendation number 13.
Madam President, if you
Yes.
would, as I will support this, because I believe it will bring some relief to Pangbourne Elementary, although I do have concerns, and I think it is something, Dr. Wilcox, hopefully we can look at in the next couple of years. Potomac Heights has an open school. I have genuine concerns of adding 35 kids there. I believe Pangbourne, being a very modern, well-conceived layout and having some experience dealing with a large student population might be better served for that, but I'll go along with this at this point in time and hopefully, look for some updates as to how it works out.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Additional questions or comments? Okay, the question is on Mr. Ridenour's motion. All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. Looking for a motion to accept recommendation number 14.
Madam President, move for acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 14, which reassigns approximately 3 grade 6 through 8 students from Northern Middle Attendance Zone to the Western Heights Middle Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Dr. Hardings. Discussion on recommendation number 14. I had one question. This is such a small number of children. We've spoken to the family. The family's okay. They're, help me understand. I know it's straightening up lines and all of that, but sometimes crooked lines, if you favor a child, is something we consider. So what?
I would have to confer to Mr. Wright. I believe he was the one that contacted the families. The only thing I'll add is the lines. The program that the board authorized the purchase of, the GIS program, has helped us find areas like this throughout the system. And this is a classic example of where we utilize that technology to determine where we had an area that we just didn't know about before. So found it very helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, can you give us some feedback on those 3 children?
Apologize, Mr. Whiteman, if you could ask your question again about the...
Yeah, we're on the recommendation number 14, which would reassign 3 children, get grades 6 to 8 from Northern Middle to Western Heights, and whether we had communications and the families are okay. Yes. With this?
We did. We, in addition to the same communication that everybody received, we called those families. I personally called those families and left messages and spoke with 3 of the families. I believe there were 5 or 6 total. They returned their calls to me, and there were no concerns. Many of them won't be really affected at all because of the progression of where the children are in making the transition to middle school. So there were no concerns.
Great, thank you. Additional questions, comments? All right, the question is on Mr. Ridenour's motion. All those in favor of recommendation number 14? 7-0, student concurs. All right, we're moving on to Group 4. In Group 4, the acceptance of boundary realignment recommendations 15-16 will provide enrollment relief to Bester Elementary and Emma K. Daub Elementary. Boundary realignment recommendation number 17 is contingent on the approval of recommendation number 15 and 16 and will establish a K-5 attendance zone for Emma K. and a regional pre-K center at Funkstown Elementary. And again, just by way of information, board acceptance of recommendation number 15 is required for consideration of recommendation 17. However, acceptance of 15 does not require nor indicate the board's acceptance of 17. So, is there a motion to accept recommendation number 15?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 15, which reassigns approximately 36 K through 5 students from the Bester Elementary attendance zone to the current Emma K. Daub Elementary and Funkstown Elementary attendance zone effective August 2016.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. Again, we're looking for a motion for recommendation 16, a note that board acceptance of 16 is required for consideration of both 17 and 21. However, acceptance of recommendation 16 does not require nor indicate the board's acceptance of recommendation 17 or 21. So, looking for a motion to accept 16.
Madam President, I move to accept boundary alignment recommendation number 16, which reassigns approximately 104 K-5 students from the current Emma K. Daub Elementary and Funkstown Elementary attendance zone to the combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary attendance zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. Okay, what was that? That was 16, so they passed. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 17?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 17, which reassigns kindergarten students from the resultant Emma K. Daub Elementary and Funkstown Elementary attendance zone as created by recommendation 15 and recommendation 16 into the resultant Emma K. Daub Elementary K through 5 attendance zone, eliminating Funkstown Elementary as a feeder to Emma K. Daub Elementary and establishing it as a regional pre-K center effective August 2016.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. A second?
Second.
Mr. Ridenour, discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. All right, Group 5. The acceptance of boundary realignment recommendations number 18, number 19, and number 20 will provide enrollment relief to Eastern Elementary, Pangbourne Elementary, and Ruth Ann Monroe Primary. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 18?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 18, which reassigns approximately 23 K-5 students from the Pangbourne Elementary attendance zone to the Old Forge Elementary attendance zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. All right, I'll be looking for a motion for number 19, but please be aware that acceptance of recommendation 19 is required for consideration of recommendation 21. However, acceptance of 19 does not require nor indicate the board's acceptance of 21. Is there a motion for recommendation 19?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 19, which reassigns approximately 12 K through 5 students from the Pangbourne Elementary attendance zone to the combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary attendance zone effective August 2016.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. A second?
Second.
Mr. Ridenour, discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. Is there a motion to accept recommendation number 20? And board acceptance of recommendation 20 is required for consideration of recommendation 21. However, acceptance of 20 does not require nor indicate acceptance of 21. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 20, which reassigns approximately 42 K through 5 students from the combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary Attendance Zone to the Greenbrier Elementary Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. A second?
Second.
Mrs. Fisher, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 3. And student concurs with the majority. All right, Group 6, boundary realignment. Recommendation 21 will establish separate attendance zones for Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary. Boundary realignment recommendation 21 is contingent on the approval of 9, 16, 19, and 20, which have all passed. Looking for a motion for acceptance of recommendation 21.
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 21, which divides the current combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary attendance zone into 2 separate attendance zones effective August 2016.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Discussion? Mr. Ridenour.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, well, the concept of dividing the 2 schools is not born. I think there's positives and negatives on both sides. I think the timing is wrong, and I can't support this particular concept in that I don't believe we've given the primary school model of Ruth Ann Monroe the time necessary to really make a determination of is that concept positive or negative. We do not yet have a cohort group that has gone through Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary to make a determination as to does this work better than the current the K-5 model or does it not. And from my personal perspective, I'd like to see at least several cohort groups travel through that model from K to 5 to get a determination as to how they've performed using that model in comparison to other groups. So at this time, and this is not saying that I would not support it in the future, but at this time I can't support this because I believe we should give it a little more time.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Additional questions? Mrs. Williams.
Could we see this map, please?
Yes, ma'am.
That shows,
Absolutely.
shows the boundaries.
Right here. So with the current recommendations, number 9, number 16, number 19, and number 20 being approved, this is the current combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary Eastern Elementary attendance zone. Recommendation 21 proposes to divide it as 2 separate K through 5 attendance zones as shown, with the green portion going to the Ruth Ann Monroe Primary School and the orange portion going to the Eastern Elementary School.
Okay. I'm not able to determine the neighborhoods or the streets. Could you tell me what the street names and neighborhoods are in both of those so that I would have a sense of
Sure.
where we are?
Let me walk up here, sorry. So probably the easiest way to determine the difference between the 2 zones would be to start at the schools. The road that splits the 2 schools is Yale Drive. There's actually a housing development behind Eastern Elementary. Starting at that housing development, which basically comes off of Yale Drive, you would take that out to Mount Etna Road, and then anything north of that would be in the Eastern attendance zone down to the dual highway. And then once you got on the dual highway, anything, if you're looking south, anything to your right would go to Eastern, anything to your left would go to Ruth Ann Monroe Primary. That line would follow the dual highway, split east and west, down to South Edgewood Drive. And then south of South Edgewood Drive, the remaining area would go to Ruth Ann Monroe Primary. And then north of South Edgewood Drive, that area would go to Eastern. And then, of course, the eastern portion would go up and include the portions from recommendation 16, the areas behind the Sun Stadium would go up and then would collect the inner city of Hagerstown.
Okay, so most of the inner city of Hagerstown would be in that gold attendance zone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So while I don't have a problem with the concept of establishing 2 K-5 schools, I do have an issue with the boundaries. And for that reason, I'm going to be voting in opposition to this particular
Thank you.
recommendation.
Since the areas will both have to be bused to the schools, I also will be voting against this because I would think it would be just as easy to split some of the area that brings all the inner city out and put some in each of the schools because it would be the same length of travel and so on. So because of the way it is set up there with those boundaries, I will not be able to vote for this either.
Thank you, Ms. Harshman. Other questions or comments? Mr. Ridenour.
Just quickly, and just to clarify, Mrs. Williams, to your point of, so that you understand where they are, I mean, knowing that area, we're talking about Colonial Park, Colonial, and some of the others that are associated with that. It's generally pretty nice homes. It's not, I don't think you get a significant difference in the farm rate or whatever else is associated with those 2 splits. I don't think there's any real monumental difference, maybe 1% or 2 on each side. I just wanted you to know that based on understanding and knowing those neighborhoods pretty well.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I was going to ask for the numbers. It was going to be my next question, if you have them.
On the farm rate, we do.
For the
have that.
existing
Yes.
schools and what they would be.
There will be some difference between the 2 schools, and not because of what Mr. Ridenour said, but because of the more inner city part of Hagerstown is heavily populated with our free and reduced meal students. But Chad, the numbers?
Yeah, if recommendation 21 are approved, Eastern Elementary is predicted to go from 71%, as it was in 2014, to 87% in 2018. And Ruth Ann Monroe Primary is projected to go from 77% in 2014 down to 60%. So there is a little bit of a demographic or socioeconomic divide.
My mistake. Just thinking of the,
Well, I mean, both schools still would be relatively high, and Eastern wouldn't be unlike Best or Salem Avenue, a couple of our other Title I schools.
Ms. Williams.
Had the committee discussed any other possibilities in terms of drawing lines?
We looked at several scenarios, and this was the one that the committee thought was the best based on all the criteria that was provided in the charge. But there were several, I think, that were identified in the minutes.
Yes. So I'm hoping that the committee then did take into account the farm rates and tried to make things as equitable as possible in terms of establishing a population to go to both?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We looked at some very interesting attendance boundaries in order to try to balance the farm rates, and then it created some other issues with some of the other factors, is obvious evidenced by the recommendation that they provided.
Trying to maintain some type of contiguous boundaries was challenging for the committee, and then also looking at the efficiency of transportation was challenging.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but what's like the strong advantage of splitting the 2 schools up instead of keeping it the way it is?
I have to defer to Matt Semler, but the request to the FIAC committee kind of came from instruction. At least while you're taking a look at all this, would you please take a look at the potential of a pre-K through 5 for both schools? So I think the FIAC committee was fulfilling that interest from instruction to take a look at it, and this is what they came up with. As you can see, whether 20 stands alone to the point the board has right now, those 2 schools are balanced. With that attendance zone between the 3 to 5 and the pre-K through 2, or whether it splits this way, they'll be balanced. But I'd have to defer to Matt or Dr. Wilcox if they don't want to make comment on the advantages or disadvantages.
Have Matt come forward. Matt.
Mr. Simler, would you like to come forward? welcome.
Well, the discussion that happened regarding the instructional advantages really moved around where we are now currently with our core curriculum and the way we do things with vertical teaming. We look at the continuation of the curriculum pre-K through 5. So it does allow the advantages for the instructional teams to kind of plan in sort of a spiraling, going from pre-K to 5 and looking at the continuous curriculum of where kids need to advance from one grade level to the next. We also talked a lot about it limits one more transition, I should say. So students leaving from second grade have to then transition to a new school. The staff has to reestablish a lot of student rapport with the students, knowing where they are instructionally, whereas staff in a building can start gaining some of those things a little early when they transition to the next grade level. They can begin to address some of their instructional needs. There are some other things, too, that we talked about, multi-age grouping opportunities. When you have students, for example, in second grade that might be able to receive some support at, say, a third or fourth grade level, the staffing and materials and resources would be available. So there were some advantages that were discussed in that.
Ms. Hirschman.
Well, again, I would like to tell you that I'm very glad that you have done this. I think it was a great move to separate schools in this way, because it really bothered me when we started out with the little tiny ones there by themselves. So I'm all for that. My only problem is the division, the way it's been divided up. So if the boundaries can be changed, I would be more than glad to vote for this, but with those boundaries, I can't. But I'm definitely for separating the schools the way you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just
Yes,
very quickly,
Mr. Ridenour.
since we've gone through the positives, how about the other way? I can see some disadvantages, Matt, and maybe not as many instructionally as you would find, although I think there are some. I do think it's going to cost us a little more money than we expect. We're going to have to make some adjustments to the facilities themselves, particularly Ruth Ann Monroe, I believe. Some of the toilets and stuff we're going to have to.
The code required in the pre-K, the 2 pre-K rooms, that we put a lower height commode into that area. But other than that, the rest of the area is equipped for elementary, so we wouldn't have to do facilities changes that way. We were thinking maybe we had some blackboard or whiteboards that would need to be changed, but they've been installed at the standard height. An obvious change would be letterhead, signage, those types of things, and then some swapping back and forth of furniture, the library, books, and maybe some of that furniture and things. So there would be some cost in it. But when we've done our facilities review of it, it could be done at minimal cost from the facility standpoint. Be some instructional swapping back and forth.
What about playground equipment? There's going to have to be some adjustment there.
Might need to install some larger equipment for older kids, although most of our playground equipment is multi-age. I think we do have kind of a pre-K set on the one side. The other is more multi-age. At Eastern, I guess the original equipment that was there when it was K to 5 exists, but it might be something we take a look at to see if we can make any enhancements.
Okay. Plus, we'll have to rename the school.
Correct.
I mean, it would have to go through, believe it or not, it would have to go through the process all over again. Not that that's a monumental deal, but okay. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Okay, additional questions on this recommendation? Okay, the question is on Dr. Harding's motion, recommendation 21. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion fails to move forward. 3 in favor, 4 opposed, and the student concurs in the majority. We're now to acceptance of boundary realignment recommendation number 22, which will provide enrollment relief to Pangbourne Elementary. Is there a motion to accept recommendation 22?
Madam President, I move to accept boundary realignment recommendation number 22, which reassigns approximately 49 K through 5 students from the Pangbourne Elementary attendance zone to the Potomac Heights Elementary attendance zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Discussion. All those in favor? 7-0, and student concurs. All right, we've also put before you some additional optional motions that I will entertain at this time.
Madam President, I move to allow rising fifth grade students and for 1 year their siblings affected by the attendance zone realignments approved for the 2016-2017 school year to be granted special permission to continue to attend their current school provided that their parents or guardians provide transportation. This motion will not apply to students attending Winter Street Elementary or Conococheague Elementary since both schools will be closed.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Williams, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. There's an additional option there.
Madam President, I move to reassign students residing at 20,002, 20,006, 20,012, 20,016, 20,020, and 20,024 Mount Etna Road as follows. From the combined Ruth Ann Monroe Primary and Eastern Elementary Attendance Zone to the Greenbrier Elementary Attendance Zone, from the E. Russell Hicks Middle School Attendance Zone to the Boonesboro Middle Attendance Zone, and from the South Hagerstown High Attendance Zone to the Boonesboro High Attendance Zone, effective August 2016.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Harshman, thank you. Discussion. Mr. Ridenour.
Dr. Michael, how many students does this impact, or Chad, at this point?
Just one household at this point, one student.
So it's because it's in that little
We think at the
area
time
that's
that
what
the
we're looking for.
Yeah, we think at the time the last realignment, that the Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee or the Blue Ribbon Districting Committee, whoever did that, came down to a road and kind of did a cutoff at the road and just took everything one direction from that road rather than looking at the development. With, again, the new software that we're using, we took a look at the park and the county land and where that came up to, and then how that other development was pulled together. So you can kind of see it came down to this road that's on this edge and stopped, and we're just looking at it
I'm going to
differently.
stand up. I'll be brief. So when the development was put in, there was a residence on Edgewood Drive. The way the boundaries used to be derived were through road lists that were actually printed up with a range of addresses, and it stopped right here, assuming that this was the last parcel. This was back in the 90s. And of course, with the old line where they used to actually hand draw the boundary lines on the old ADC maps, the line was drawn straight through the golf course down. So once we increased our technology and we started actually following parcel lines, where we went to the front or the back of parcels, we came over and we matched the Black Rock Golf Course parcel, and it created this little nook. I did go back and check all the homes that are listed in the recommendation or the motion, and they all are part of that development. So they are listed as part of it.
Which development is that?
Brightwood.
Is that Edge?
Right.
No,
Brightwood.
Brightwood, or is it?
Brightwood Acres.
Brightwood.
It's
I
the new
thought the
section.
folks who spoke to us said they had 3 students in school. It's just that one house, though, but
They may, according to my records, when I did a search on K through 12 students, there was only one student in an elementary school that I found currently. So.
Additional questions, Ms. Fisher? Others?
Brightman?
Yes.
Just a question and then a comment. Do we know what year in school that student is? I don't want to get too much into the details, but if we're going to make the change effective 2016, what year the student is now kind of matters.
I believe second grade this year.
Great. And then a comment as we get to the last of these. I again want to thank the staff, thank the members of the Facilities and Enrollment Advisory Committee, thank the members of the community who participated in the process. This is always a major undertaking for a Board of Education. We ask people to do a whole lot of research to try to bring us the best types of recommendations they can, and I think all involved this time have done fantastic work, and while there's probably people who won't like various decisions the board have made, I think, certainly I understand that, I think that we as a system can feel proud, at least of the process, certainly, that we've used, and the work that staff has done in developing the recommendations and communicating with our community. So I want to thank all involved for that.
Mr. Ridenour.
Just one more quick question with that little segment. The remainder of the subdivision, the Brightwood, they go to the middle school and high school. What middle school?
Greensboro Middle
They
and Greensboro
all
High.
go to that? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I would like to dovetail off what Dr. Harding said. I believe that this was the most seamless redistricting we've ever had in my 12 years, almost 12 years on the board. There were, very few glitches, and the software, the money that we spent for the software was incredibly well spent, because it was so much easier to really get a concept of where you were going with it and get the lines matched up. It was very well done, Chad. My compliments to you, Dr. Michael, the staff, and the committee. This was a lot easier than what I've remembered in the past. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I will just say from the chair's position that the cheat sheet that all of you put together has been a huge aid to get through this. This is a very quasi-judicial type of a process, and if there is an appeal, we have to be very sensitive to the wording and the motions and to be sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So again, thank you for the support. Significant. All right, the final question is on Mrs. Fisher's motion. All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs. We made it through. Thank you. Appreciate the work of my colleagues. All right. That takes us to consideration of the Educational Facilities Master Plan. Dr. Michael, you're still there.
Still here. Good afternoon, board members. As you're aware, we're here this afternoon requesting your approval of the 2015 Educational Master Plan. May 19th, we had a work session with the board, described the plan in detail. It is an annual plan. It can be changed next year if things change and conditions change here in the county for any reason. It is a requirement of the state that this document be approved by the board and submitted prior to July 1st. It's also our guiding document that will help us develop our capital improvement program that will be submitted in late September, and our comprehensive maintenance plan that will be submitted in October. At this time, staff would request your approval of the 2015 Educational Master Plan.
Thank you very much. All right, looking for a motion to approve the 2015 Educational Facilities Master Plan.
Madam President, I move for approval of the 2015 Educational Facilities Master Plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. A second?
Second.
Mr. Ridenour. Discussion, questions? Do you have your hand up, Mr. Ridenour?
No, sir. No, ma'am.
All
No,
right.
sir.
The question is on Mrs. Williams' motion. All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs. Thank you. Mr. South, third quarter FY 2015 budget adjustments. And just so there's no confusion, this is the adjustments to the existing budget that we're still in until June 30th, correct? The earlier adjustment is the budget yet to come. So.
And again, the requested third quarter budget adjustments were included in the meeting packet that you received over the weekend. The Finance Committee reviewed the proposed adjustments in detail at their May 26th meeting and has asked staff to forward them to the full board with a recommendation for approval. I trust that each of you have had an opportunity to review these requested adjustments, and at this time, staff requests your approval of these proposed adjustments. Of course, I would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. South. Motion?
Madam President, move to accept the third quarter budget adjustments as presented by Mr. South.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gessford. Questions? All right. The question is on Mr. Ridenhour's motion to approve the proposed FY 2015 third quarter budget adjustments. All those in favor? 7-0. Student concurs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are now into a fairly lengthy consent agenda. I believe we have 13 items before us today. Mrs. Freeman, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Mrs. Brightman is correct. There are 13 procurement items on the agenda this afternoon for your consideration. These items have been discussed and reviewed by the Procurement Review Committee last week. The superintendent has authorized them for this meeting's agenda, and staff is here and available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Motion, please, on this item.
Madam President, I move to accept the following bids proposals. First, to approve the bid proposal for a generator installation at Marshall Street School to Schiffer Electric Associates at a cost of $76,775. For gym equipment replacement at Hancock Middle Senior High School to TJ Distributors, cost of $65,000. Renewal of the contract for athletic training services to Pivot Physical Therapy at a cost of $248,900. Design roof projects to Profit and Associates at a cost of $88,150. Server upgrades for security systems to Hartford Computer Group at a cost of $79,526.72. Desktop computers to Hartford Computer Group at $45,400. Renewal of the contract for cleaning products and services to Food Safety Solutions, Inc., cost of $99,873. Projectors and lamps to Nicholas Pepino Associates at $26,846.50. Laptop computers and devices for 6 schools to Apple Incorporated at $945,799.73. Laptop computers and devices for advanced programs at CTE to Apple Inc., cost of $183,937.68. Map test for the 2015-16 school year to Northwest Evaluation Association at $171,225. Modular walls for Hickory Elementary to Duron Inc. at a cost of $158,673.31. And finally, asphalt overlay projects to Huntsberry Brothers at a cost of $343,631.65.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. All right, questions? Mrs. Fisher.
Number 13 on the list. I just want to make sure I've got this straight. This is for 4 overlay projects at 4 different schools. We also had a bid on May the 5th that also went to Huntsberry Brothers for asphalt overlay maintenance program. Does that mean, and it was for $200,000 estimate, is that just if something happens to occur to the macadam somewhere to be?
No, that was the renewal of a bid on asphalt overlay where they give us unit pricing, so much for asphalt, base course, top course, gravel, that type of thing. So this is using that bid process. They go out and actually measure everything up, use those unit prices, and submit a quote based on those items.
Well,
and when those projects exceed $25,000, we generally combine them, bring them forward for your information and approval.
so, but the May 5th was an estimate of $200,000, and this is going to cost 3.5.
Right, for the 4 projects we have for this summer, actually, this will come out of this year's FY15 money, so we still will have remaining budget for FY16. We've already overrun FY15, but we do have budget adjustments that we made to cover these projects within contractual services of Mr. Mills's accounts and maintenance.
Okay.
Additional questions? Mrs. Williams, just about to.
Yeah, to move ahead.
Uh-huh.
Looking at number 3, the athletic training services, this will be our first renewal. And I had the opportunity to attend a boardmanship academy session at MABE. And we, I believe, are one of very few counties in the state that has this service in all of our schools. Other counties are doing it other ways, and I think it's a good thing that we're doing, and I'm just wondering if we're convinced that this is the most economical way and giving us the most protection for our students. Are we satisfied that we will be continuing this, renewing either with this company or another, or at some point will we need to look at doing things differently?
This is our first renewal. As the board may recall, last year when these bids came forward, we were very pleased with the price that we received. I think it was almost half of our estimate. And what I've heard from Eric Michael and principals, they're very pleased with the services that have been provided. They might have had a personnel issue here or there, but the companies has immediately taken action to correct anything like that. And I think it's very much benefiting our athletes, and it's an excellent service at an excellent price.
Right, thank you.
All right. Question is on the consent agenda before us. All those in favor? 7-0, student concurs.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Wilcox, we're to your update. Any words of wisdom this afternoon?
No, just thank you for the work that the board did on the new attendance patterns. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Personnel. Mrs. Francisco.
To be fair to Ms. Francisco, a moment ago she asked me if I was going to have a superintendent's report. And I said I might, but why does she want to know? She said, because I want to know when to start up front. So I'm sorry, Laura.
You were set
I should have
up on
gone
that
longer.
one.
You were set up a little bit.
You were set up.
Yeah.
Mrs. Brightman, Dr. Wilcox, members of the board, as discussed earlier in closed session, there are several personnel actions for your review and approval this afternoon.
Thank you. A motion?
Madam President, I move for the approval of personnel actions recommended by staff.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. A second?
Second, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ridenour. All those in favor of the personnel recommendations? 7-0, student abstains. Got so used to saying concurs, I have to think. I looked down. Mrs. Williams.
Could I ask a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Move
please.
right ahead. I had someone in the community ask me about a past practice of posting staff changes on the website, and the way they usually access that information, they came to find that that link was no longer there. Is that something that we're not doing, or there's another way to access that information?
It's still there. It could be if the person hasn't looked recently since we changed over to the HR website, that was a change. But they are both still posted, both the superintendent approved personnel changes as well as board approved each time they are approved. So these today would likely go up either this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And I can give you the exact series of links. I'm sorry, without looking at it, I can't tell you how to click to get there, but they are there.
They are there?
Yep.
Oh, just in a different
Since we switched,
a different way to get there.
exactly,
different
since
path.
HR has their own page now, there's a little bit different pathway,
Okay.
but they're there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item under personnel is consideration of employment contract for a superintendent of schools. And the discussion will be led by the entire board, and we need a motion to start the discussion.
Madam President, I move to approve the employment contract of Dr. Clayton M. Wilcox, Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. A second?
Second.
Dr. Hardings. Discussion. No discussion?
Madam President.
Oh, sorry. Mrs., you had your hand up.
I was wondering if you would explain the conditions of that, or is that not going to be put out?
That certainly can be part of the discussion. I'm happy to explain that. What we are doing here today is basically offering the superintendent a new 4-year contract. It would start July 2015 and run to June 30th of 2019.
Now,
Yes, I'm sorry.
Now, I do have a statement, and mine consists of some concerns that I have already spoken of. And I would like to hold this consideration of the change to the superintendent's contract until next year, since there are still 2 years left on his contract, which would give Dr. Wilcox time to address some of the concerns that I expressed.
Thank you, Ms. Harshman. Other comments?
President.
Yes, Dr. Hardings.
I'm glad that we have the opportunity this year, after the work that we did as a legislative team and as a board, frankly, to give us the opportunity to offer a new contract to a superintendent before the existing contract expires. It's a decision that the board can make but does not need to make. It's at the board's, I guess the board and the superintendent's option to either establish a new contract or to not each year. I certainly support offering the superintendent a new contract. I'm pleased that he is willing to accept one for another 4 years in Washington County. He's now been here for 4 years, and had we followed what had been the traditional process in the state of Maryland, this is the year that we would have the opportunity to renew his contract. So I think the timing is right for assessing the job that he's done since he's been here. I continue to be a big supporter of his. I think he brings a visionary approach. I think he is leading this school system towards being a system that will deliver an educational product to our students that is relevant for 21st century students, 21st century learners, and 21st century employers. I think we've seen many successes in the last year, including the PARCC assessments. He has led us in going from not nearly having the infrastructure we need to being able to implement those in the past year. I think the FIAC process, which we just saw, was exemplary. I think he's shown great support for the board's priorities in terms of our legislative session. I think he's been responsive to the board's direction when the board has tried to pull him back from things that he wanted to do. I think he's been respectful of the board's role in the process. I think he's found new opportunities for students, whether it be the middle college, the Fire and Rescue Academy, some of the creative things he's done with life skills classes. I think he has updated all of, not all yet, but on our way to all of our business systems to make them relevant for 21st century business climate. And I continue to believe that we're beginning to see the outcomes of the many initiatives that he's brought to the county over the last 4 years. Through his leadership, I think we are poised to reap those rewards, to continue to reap those rewards based on the front-end work that he's already done. I think he's the right leader at the right time to continue the school system's transition into a national example of what a 21st century education can and should be. And I want to personally thank him for being willing to continue to serve in this community.
Thank you, Dr. Hardings. Additional comments, discussion? Mr. Ridenour.
Yes, I want to dovetail off Dr. Harding's comments because I too believe Dr. Wilcox is doing an exceptional
Is your
job.
mic on?
Is it on, Jamie? He makes sure it's on all the time. He gives me hell
It's hard to hear.
when I don't
All right.
have it.
Yes, sir.
Got you now.
Okay, but I think he's doing a great job, and he has, in my mind, he has an exceptional understanding of how things are changing, and is adaptable and realizes that we can't go back to the way I taught or the way I did my job, 10, 15 years ago as an educator, that changes and use of technology, use of our personnel are going to be different, and they're going to change rapidly year after year after year after year, and it takes an individual who has a feel for that to do the kind of job that we need him to do. We can't stand still. We have to move forward, and I believe he is the right person at the right time to continue that, and I'm very happy. As I made the motion, I'm very happy to support a new employment contract with Dr. Wilcox for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Additional comments? Yes, sir.
I have to agree with my colleague, Mrs. Harshman, concerning the contract extension. We already have a contract that says that we have 2 more years. And a lot can change in 2 years, and I think at this time, I would like to see that time occur a little bit more, where some of the issues that were brought today, that we would look at them and say, hey, where are we, a year from now, and then reevaluate that. That's kind of where I stand on this with the contract extension with 2 years. So I think I'm not going to be able to support the 4-year extension, but just to continue to ride it out for another 2 years because we have the 2-year contract still valid.
Very good. Mr. Ridenour.
I want to remind everyone, and again, the public also, this is not a contract extension, it's a new contract. And I'll use since I was a coach and since I still love sports probably as much as anybody in the world, when you have LeBron James, you don't let him get away. If he has a 10-year contract and you feel that he can be of service and benefit to you for 15 more, you give him that contract. If you have, Seth Curry and he's only signed up for 2 years, you want to get him up for 10 so that you can have him during that period of time that you think that individual can be of benefit to your organization. And I think that with a superintendent, with any executive type position, that is a mindset that I have. If I've got somebody that I think and believe can do the job, is doing the job, and will continue to do the job, I want to get him signed up and hopefully keep him here as long as I can. And as long as he will do and does a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Ridenour. Others? Ms. Harshman.
I am wondering if this has to go back to the state since the bill does not come into effect until July, so do we still have to get approval through the superintendent of Maryland?
As with Comar and with any contract, it all has to be, once the board approves it, then the superintendent is notified and signs. It's been happening that way from the beginning. That did not change with the new legislation.
I just meant the dropping a contract and picking it up because we had to always ask specifically for that to happen. and she did not approve that the other
Well, that's
time. So
why
that's why
the new
I was
legislation
asking.
and-
Yeah, which goes into effect July. I was asking if we still had to ask her for approval for dropping a contract and picking another one up.
And the answer is no. I think what you're possibly confusing the two issues. A superintendent's contract always starts on July 1st. The legislation starts on July 1st. It's already been signed into effect. Governor Hogan already, it is law at this point. And under normal circumstances, the state superintendent signs off on every contract. So that will happen, yes. But there's absolutely no reason that she will refuse it because it is now law that Washington County has the ability to offer a new 4-year contract at any point during the existing contract.
Starting July 1st, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any additional? I will take a moment then. I just have really feel that it's important to send a clear message that the board and the superintendent share the system's vision, and that vision is one that we all worked on collaboratively, the 8 of us. And in a state where there's been a lot of churn in superintendents, educational leadership, I believe it's imperative that this board provide this community with continuity of leadership. Our school communities deserve that, our students deserve that, and our teachers do. WCPS, under Dr. Wilcox's leadership, has improved literacy and numeracy, has also strengthened the digital literacy of our students and teachers. And our graduates are better able to compete for 21st century jobs. Finally, and I'm repeating something that Dr. Hardings said in his comments, but I think it's certainly worth repeating, I am confident that Dr. Wilcox is the right superintendent at the right time for the right reasons for Washington County. So I find it an honor to be able to offer him and for him to accept a new 4-year contract. Comments, questions before we go to a vote? This is on Mr. Ridenour's motion. All those in favor, please signify. Those opposed? The vote is 4 in favor, 3 opposed, with the student concurring with the majority. We're now moving on to board member committee reports. Curriculum and instruction. It just blew it. Mr. McHose, a report.
The student government is out of session right now, so we have nothing to report.
No comments, any general hellos?
Well, we do have Erica Greenwald.
She's made it
She's
through a
going to
first
be-
meeting.
Yeah. She's going to be
Excellent.
starting this July.
Very good. And we will do a formal introduction when you take over as well. Mrs. Harshman, curriculum and instruction.
Curriculum and instruction met on the 27th of May. We discussed the purchasing of new sociology textbooks, but the book was not available to examine at that time, so hopefully we will get copies very shortly. We also discussed the reorganization of the Division of Curriculum and Instruction, and it is being restructured, and it is now named Divisions of Curriculum, Instruction, and Accountability, which also takes into the testing department and special education. So we're looking for great things to come from this. I think we have a good handle on what we need to do for curriculum this coming school year. So it's nice to have Mrs. Pugh with us.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Williams, facilities.
Yes, thank you. The committee met on Tuesday, May 26th at noon with all members present. Also, there were Dr. Michael, Mr. Criswell, Mr. Mills, and Mr. Rollins. The committee was provided with an update on the progress being made on the construction of Jonathan Hager Elementary School. The project is on schedule and going well. Mr. Mills shared information regarding the work done on the maintenance building here at the Center for Educational Services. And once the building is complete and the department's vehicles and heavy machinery are moved from the employee parking lot, we'll have 39 additional parking spaces in the employee parking lot. Well, that's noteworthy, I think. Plenty of space. Mr. Criswell provided an update on the projects that have been approved for FY 2016 QZAB funding. 2 of the 3 submitted proposals were approved. We've received grant funds in the amount of $750,000, and they'll be used to put an emergency generator at Williamsport High School and playground equipment at Hickory Elementary School. We were provided an update on the bids that will be coming before the board for approval in June. I don't think I have to go into what they are. They'll be coming soon enough. This is June. We had some today, and we'll have some at our second meeting. Other topics discussed, we had a brief update on the educational facilities master plan and on the calls and emails that Mr. Criswell had received regarding redistricting since the last meeting of the committee. We were told about the facilities planners meeting that was held at Antietam Academy and was hosted by Washington County Public Schools. There was discussion there that focused on cost increases and labor issues. So our folks here were very pleased to be able to host that. Attendees included Dr. Lever, John Willems of MABE, and representatives from MACO and PZAM. We're receiving some grant funding through Safe Routes to School, and that will result in new and replaced paths and walkways, and also the construction of a handicap-compliant ramp and a push-button countdown pedestrian signal at the intersection of Frederick Street and Memorial Boulevard for Bester Elementary students. So work is expected to be completed on that before school opens in August. We're not planning to have any meetings of the Facilities Committee during the months of June and July, and that's to allow staff to be able to focus on the many projects that they have on their schedule. So the next meeting should be in August unless there's some special emergency or special need arise. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Kessford, Finance.
Yes, thank you. We met on May the 26th, and all members were present, including Mr. Sisler, Mr. Brandenburg, Mr. South, and Mrs. Freeman. Mr. Sisler gave us an update on the year-to-date financial activities, and Mrs. Freeman and Mr. Brandenburg also brought us update on the preparations for Tyler Software Go Live, which will take effect on July 1st. Mr. South talked about the school audit that will be coming up, and then we went over the third quarter budget adjustments. And at this time, we will not be having a meeting in June.
Good, thank you. Mrs. Fisher, Policy Review and Development.
Policy Committee met May 26th. We reviewed the Bridge to Excellence document and the Program of Studies sections on career technology education, gifted and talented education, and special education as they related to policies IGAK, IGBB, and IGBA. We also considered the COMAR regulations related to these areas and the annotated code. We are waiting for completion at this time of the special education audit to determine the status of IGBA, which is also in that group. The other 2 will likely be recommended for rescission based on the fact that they are covered in Maryland law. Also, policy IGC, entitled Student Trips, is being revised for our next meeting, and policy IGBJ on home teaching and attendance ages is on hold right now for further analysis. We will be meeting both June the 9th and June the 23rd. Both meetings begin at 9 in the morning. If I may, ad hoc committee on communication also met recently on May 27th. We completed reviewing the board operating processes as well as board policies which related to communication. We will be meeting on June 9th and will hopefully finish our recommendations for presentation at a future workshop. At this time, I would officially like to request an extension of time for this committee until July 31st, based on my illness a while back that interfered with some meetings, and the fact that we have been so busy with so many other items this month and probably will be yet at our next meeting in June. So I'm requesting an extension until July 31st.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. I'd like to just reach a consensus with my colleagues that we extend the charge for the ad hoc committee on board communications from June 30th to July 31st. All those supporting that extension of the charge? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no report. Sorry, Mr. Ridenour,
It's
HR.
okay, Madam President. The HR committee met May 26th and discussed possible consolidation and potential rescinding of current personnel policies and regulations. The committee will not meet in June, but will tentatively meet July 28th. Time and place to become forthcoming.
All right, thank you. Just briefly, yes, sir.
I have a comment. Can I make it?
No. Of course. Dr. Wilcox, comment.
Because the superintendent's report is at a different time in the agenda, I wasn't able to say this, but I want to say, first of all, thank you to the board for extending a new 4-year contract to me as to be your superintendent, so thank you very much. I particularly want to say thank you for the kind comments that were issued by several of you. I view this new contract as a validation of some of the work that we're doing on behalf of our students and our community, the support that we're providing to our teachers at each and every one of our schools, and the work that we're doing with our administrators to make them even better leaders as well. It was not, however, lost on me that the vote was 4-3, and I want you to know that I'm going to work hard to keep the faith of those of you who support the work that we're doing. And I'm also going to work hard to earn the support of those who didn't support the new contract at this time. I think oftentimes people take a look at conversations like this, and because they only see the public vote, they don't understand all the work that goes into not only the decisions that are made by this elected board, but also the conversations that are had. As I said earlier today, I absolutely heard each of you who had something to say about my leadership style or about the direction that we are going in as a district. That will not be lost on me. But I also want to say that you don't become a superintendent of schools without the hard work of a lot of really great people. And so not only the people here at the CES building who on a daily basis do great work. You saw some of that today in the FIAC committee. You also saw that in Chris South in his office. You see that every day in the work that Richard Wright does, Jamie Hay does, Laura Francisco, and a host of other people in this building. And quite honestly, oftentimes the people that you don't see are the true heroes of the school system. They're the people that make it possible for those of us to stand here and kind of and lead the system. That said, it's not just those people. It's great teachers and support staff workers at across 46 different elementary schools that make a difference in the lives of our kids that I'm able to take credit for. So when I talk to you about reading achievement going up in this district, when I talk about 60-some% of our kids who are reading at or above grade level and another 20% who are gaining more than year's growth in a year's time, it is because of great teachers in the school, because of great support staff. It's because kids are well fed and well nourished by people who provide food services to our young people or get them to school safely in our transportation efforts. So again, I hope that the larger community understands how much I appreciate the opportunity to serve as the superintendent, and I hope that you as a board can come to kind of a collective understanding that we are in this together, and that by focusing on the positive while not ignoring those things that are challenges is probably the best way for us to move forward for the larger community. So I want to thank all of you. Coleman, thank you in particular for your service as a student, because you see the work I do every day up close and personal. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilcox. We're just about through the agenda. Future agenda item, basically the next meeting, the June 16th meeting, will be very few action items. We may have a consent agenda of some procurement items on that. I believe 3 of our board members may be absent from that meeting, so it will probably be shortened accordingly. We're looking at forward having a district technology planning advisory committee update, a gang task force update, excess property discussion, and a year-end update on the 403B. So I guess we'll start with board comments, and someone remind me, I think Mr. McCose.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Mrs. Harshman.
Well, first of all, we will miss you. You have been a wonderful person to sit beside and talk with and eat candy with on occasions. So we will miss you. Also, I would like to wish everyone a safe summer, and I'd like to congratulate the class of 2015 in their graduation, and please also have a safe summer. And if you go to senior week, be very careful. I will have the honor of speaking at my alma mater, South Hagerstown High School, on Friday evening, which is very near and dear to my heart because once a rebel, always a rebel. And thank you so much to the wonderful teachers and staff that we have in Washington County. And I know that the year would never have been this successful without them. So thank you very much for all that you do, and we can never thank you enough.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes, thank you. Just a few things. On Monday, May 21st, I attended the Washington County Family Center's graduation. The banquet hall was filled with members of the Washington County community, family members of the graduates, educators, elected officials, and community leaders who were there to acknowledge and celebrate the achievement of young people who, with the support of family and our community, had juggled the pursuit of a high school education and the responsibilities of parenthood. So it was a great celebration, and I was very, very honored to be there. On Tuesday, May 26th, I had the opportunity to attend an informal parent reception at the home of Dottie Grueller. Mrs. Grueller is the administrator of a Facebook group, WC Parents, which has a membership of about 3,400, and I've prepared a written report of some of the discussion that occurred there as a means of sharing information with my colleagues and with the superintendent. It was a pleasure to interact with the parents as they shared their experiences, concerns, and suggestions. There were also requests for assistance related to a variety of topics, including cyberbullying, diversity, and course offerings. And then on Thursday, May 28th, I had the privilege of being in the company of Dr. Wilcox to bring greetings and congratulations from this board to the Marshall Street Job Development Center graduates and their families at Kepler Theater. Then later that evening, I was able to attend the Clear Spring High School Future Farmers of America banquet. From the delicious chicken dinner from Ernst Market to the closing ceremony, it was an evening of celebration, community, and recognition of achievement and leadership. So it was a great Thursday. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hardings.
No comments today.
Yesford?
Yes, thank you very much. I also attended the May 18th Family Center graduation with staff members Rick Akers, Mrs. Williams, Dr. Michael, and Mrs. Harshman. That was a very nice time down at the Williamsport Fire Hall. I've spoke to the Antietam Academy graduation, and I'd like to say that that graduation was a very touching ceremony, especially for Dr. Morrows and Matt Mariello, who that week lost a graduating student. It was a very difficult time, and they made sure that the students were able to celebrate their graduation along with their families. And so I'd like to say congratulations to the staff out there. I also attended the family gathering of Dottie Grueller, and it was very informative to hear the parents of different students, be it elementary, high school, or middle school, and hear their concerns and really some praises. So that was very nice to hear, and I thank Mrs. Grueller for inviting me to that, and I hope that there will be more of those out there in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Gessford. Ms. Fisher.
I had the opportunity to attend a fire and rescue graduation last week. In just 3 short years, this program has garnered actually national recognition. Once again, the cadets proved to be exemplary. Recently, they attended all-state competition and competed against other groups from 4 states. Our cadets took the 1st, 2nd, and 4th places in that competition. It's also noteworthy to point out that with the completion of the renovation of 701 Frederick Street by this Board of Education, we have the distinction of being the only public school system to have a separate facility for its fire and rescue program. I also attended the Clear Spring High School's FFA annual banquet and awards program last week. Among the many awards given that evening were several citations from the governor. The Clear Spring FFA is the first and only ag program in Maryland to receive this honor. It's also of interest that the enhancement of the ag program at CSHS may entail another public-private partnership, as that community has begun putting together a plan to match the federal grant that they've been offered. This endeavor is a great example of a WCPS community inspired by creativity and achievement.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Mr. Ridenour.
Yes, I attended several performances last week, but also was with Dr. Harding's, or excuse me, Mrs. Brightman at the Williamsport groundbreaking. I think we have some very excited Wildcats there to have that facility get started so that they will be able to utilize it in the future. I also had an opportunity to attend the Memorial Day parade in Sharpsburg, which is always a blast. Got to see a lot of my friends from Boonesboro and Sharpsburg, saw several students I haven't seen for a century, it seems like. And other than the review stand collapsing, it was a great day. It was a lot of fun, and the parade and the people were wonderful. And it is a tribute to Sharpsburg, Boonesboro, and the other communities that I won't mention who was on it when it happened, but
I was hoping you would.
the communities that have these parades, because it does bring a lot of synergy to that community when these things take on, and very appreciative that I was able to be there.
Thank you. It's hard to believe, but it's about 6 minutes before 3, and we had a hard stop at 3:15. So I would like to applaud my colleagues for making it through a very important and very full agenda. Before we adjourn, reminder that we are expected downtown at 4 o'clock for a joint meeting with the county commissioners. But this gives us a little extra time to get out the door, take a break, catch our breath, and get there by 4. So thank you again, and this meeting is adjourned.